The Gemara in Yevamis, Daf Samach Beis Amid Beis. Where it says, Omru, Shnei Masar Elef Zugim Talmidim Haya Loyla Rebbe Kiva, Migebas Ad Antipris, Vikulan Mesu Beperek Echad, Mibnei Sheloi Nogu Kovet Zer Lazer, V'Haya Ha'olam Shomin. The world was desolate. Ad Sheba Rebbe Kiva Eitzel Dabaisenu Shebadorim. And he taught them Torah. Who did Rebbe Kiva teach Torah to? To Reb Meir, Reb Yehuda, Reb Yossi, Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, Reb Elazar ben Shammaya. The Haim Hamidu Torah Oisei Shah. Tanu. Kulam Mesu mi Pesach v'ad Atzeres. They all died from Pesach bis Shavuos. Omer Chana bar Abba v'Teim Rav Chia bar Avin. Kulam Mesu mi Sarah. Mai. Omar Nachman Askero. Many years we read this Gemara, and the Gemara tells us the tragic story of Rebbe Kiva, Talmidei Rebbe Kiva, Kedoshei Elyon, Tzadikim, that all died, 24,000 Talmidim in such a short amount of time, 32 days according to most Rishonim. The deaths took place only a course of 32 days, not even of the 50 days. It was over the span of 50 days, but they only died in 32 days. And there are many years when we read this Gemara, and I don't know how much we fathomed the devastation. What does it mean? The Rosh Hashiva, Rebbe Kiva, the first day, the day after Pesach, he came to a nuzman where Rebbe Kiva was going to teach them the HILCHOS Torah. Rebbe Kiva was the Moiser Torah. The Gemara Menachos says that Rebbe Kiva asked, that Moshe Rabbeinu asked, why give the Torah to me when you can give it through Rebbe Kiva? And HaKadosh Baruch Hu answered him, Kallah, the Arizal explains that it's a good kasha, because Rebbe Kiva is right to give the Torah, but there's cheshbonos that are greater than that. So Rebbe Kiva, the Rebbe of Klal Yisrael, comes to his yeshiva, the biggest yeshiva, 24,000 Tanoim, 24,000 of the greatest people that were ever amassed. And Rebbe Kiva comes and he starts the first shir klali, and he gives a shir, he gives a chizik. And Rebbe Kiva, that day, gets a Besurah. What's the Besurah? They tell him one of his Talmidim was Nifter, and not one of his Talmidim. All of a sudden, they come in and they tell him, Rebbe, Rosh Hashiva, another Talmid was Nifter. And then they come in, Rosh Hashiva, and before they could even, there's a whole line of Bachrim telling him, Bachrim, Tanoim, Tzadikim, Yisai De'olim, telling him, another Tzadik was Nifter, and another Tzadik was Nifter, and another Tzadik was Nifter. And by the end of the day, there were hundreds and hundreds, over 750 tzaddikim that were nifter. Already, they didn't even have time to bury the niftarim, and already they're talking about murdik espedim, they're talking about murdik chizukim that they're going to do. And by the next day, we all know the story, the matzah got worse and worse and worse. And every single day, more niftarim, more tzaris. There was no time even to bury the niftarim. And when we read these gemaras in a different year, hard to be massive. Look at Rebbe Kiva. He buried 24,000 Talmidim, Tzadikim, Kedoshei Elyonim. No, at that point, the person hears in such clear voice from Shemayim, Rebbe Kiva, you're not going to be the Rosh Hashiva of Klal Yisrael. You're not going to be the Moiser Torah of Klal Yisrael. Go find a cave, Zetach, and learn a bissel, but you're not going to be the Rosh Hashiva of Klal Yisrael. 24,000 Levayas Rebbe Kiva had to attend. The last Talmidim Rebbe Kiva buried by himself. And we would imagine Rebbe Kiva at that point should have broke. There should be no more Rebbe Kiva. We should hear a medrash about this great Rosh Hashiva, Rebbe Kiva, that he had 24,000 Talmidim and they all died. And Rebbe Kiva became a broken man, a nishper, and that's the end of the story of Rebbe Kiva. But the Gemara goes weiter, and the Gemara says something which is almost tamua. The Gemara says, Ba Rebbe Kiva, Eitzel Rebbe Seinu Shabadorim. Rebbe Kiva went to the Rebbe's, Rebbeim, in the south. Now, boys say, anybody who knows anything about the geography of Eretz Yisrael and knows a little bit about Eretz Yisrael knows that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is in the north, is in the Tzafon. Reb Meir is in Tiberia. Rabbi Kiva, Reb Meir, they're buried over there in Tiberia. And Reb Yossi from Tzipori. All these great Tanoim, where were they? They weren't in the Dorim. They were all in the Tzafon. They were all in the north. And the cash is obvious. It said after the 24,000 Levayas, when Rebbe Kiva was supposed to be broken, and Rebbe Kiva was supposed to give it all up, as they say. What did Rebbe Kiva do? Rebbe Kiva went to Rabbi Seinu Shebadarim, he went to Rabbi Meir, to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, to Rabbi Yossi, to continue the spread of Torah. But Rabbi Saichab Kasha, they weren't in the Darim, they were in the Tzafim. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was in the north. He's in Meiron. Rabbi Yossi was in Tzipori, Rabbi Meir was in Tiberia. So what are they doing in the south? I don't know if what I'm about to say is there, Mr. Keteretz, if I say. But Libi Oymenli, my late tells me, everyone knew Rebbe Kiva was the kiss of death. If you learn by Rebbe Kiva, you die. Did it have anything to do with Rebbe Kiva? About not. Chazal already were megalatas. It was because like nagu kapit zeh. But for some reason, and that was the rate that was going around, don't learn Torah by Rebbe Kiva. It's a sakana to learn Torah by Rebbe Kiva. So I have a svara Rabbi Isai, Reb Meir, Reb Shimon, all of these greats with Tanoim, Reb Yossi. You know what they did? They said they knew Rebbe Kiva was going to try to start in the yeshiva. So they went to the Dorim. They ran away. They ran away from Rebbe Kiva because nobody wanted to learn by Rebbe Kiva, because if you learn by Rebbe Kiva, then you die. Rebbe Kiva, Holach Achreim to the Dorim. Rebbe Kiva went all the way to the south. Rebbe Kiva didn't stop. Rebbe Kiva traveled all over Eretz Yisrael to find these great Tanoim, to teach the lesson that we need to hear this year. So many Azeifil Niftarim, and so many tzarts and so many levayas. And when we stop with this levaya, we don't have time. We have to get to the next levaya. And there's not enough time even. And we don't know what's going to be with a spade and what's going to be with shivas and what's going to be with avelis. And we think to ourselves, what's going to be with us? What's going to be with Klal Yisrael the day after this? What's going to be with us? And Rebbe Kiva taught us the lesson that we need to hear now in the time of SEFIRA. Rebbe Kiva taught us that we're halach all the way to the Darim, and that we go weiter, and that we're not yayish, and that Klal Yisrael will rebuild. And when Avram Avinu took his children, he took his son to the Akedah, and it says in the pasuk, Vayar Meirachai, Avram Avinu is going to do Moiridik Mesiras Nefesh, Moiridik Mitzvah, and still he feels, at that point he should have felt exhilarated. He's coming to do the mitzvah of the Rebbeinu Shloila. He's coming to do a Kiddush Hashem. He's coming to give Kallus the koyach to do Kiddush Hashem for all the dayers. And what does he feel? Vayar Mokem Meirachek. Tzaddikim say Avram Avinu felt rochek from Mokem. He felt rochek far away from the Rebbeinu Shloila. And even when he was doing that Moiridik and Mesiras Nefesh, he still felt far away. And Halakha Rebbe Kiva, Rosh Hashiva of Klal Yisrael, must have felt very rochek. Must have felt Simonim from Shemayim, you're not going to be the Rosh Hashiva of Klal Yisrael. But what did Rebbe Kiva, what did Avram do? They pushed weiter, and they worked harder in Avodas Hashem. And today we're in days that it's difficult, and the Avodas Hashem is also difficult. Not to be able to daven together, not to be able to learn together. Lighter, to have loved ones that are not well, and some even lighter. And it's so difficult, so difficult. So what do we do in these days? We learn from our Rebbe, the Halakha Rebbe Kiva, not to break and to push weiter, and Klal Yisrael will be built. And that's what we are zoiche today, because the Aguda understands what is the tachlis of the Shah, what's the call of the hour, what's the call of the Shah, is not to break and not to be, when Klal Yisrael are bepirid, is to be ma'agid us together and to bring us as an egud together to go weiter in our houses, to learning Torah, to davening, to learn together, to learn the Halakha Torah and to push weiter. With that, we'll take the message of our Rebbe, Rebbe Kiva, Davka in these days, that no matter how many Neftarim, and no matter how many tzaris we're going to be built, Klal Yisrael are going to be built. And we are showing today, like the Gemara tells us, you have to have an yontiv chatzi lachem, you have to have chatzi lashem. And we're showing Rebbeinu Shalom, the chatzi lashem, that's the chatzi lachem. That's what we love to do. Our oinig yontiv is to sit and learn together the Halakha Torah. So let's, Rabbi Isai, without further, we have a big agenda, Rabbi Isai. Azman Kotzer, Hamlacha Meruba. There are shilas this year in SEFIRA Sa'imer. It's broken up into two parts, as you all know. The Shulchan Aruch and Siman Tov Beites is about the counting halachas. And over here in Siman Tov Tzadi Gimel, which we will talk about today, Be'ezus Hashem, is the halachas of the Avelis, the Hanhagis during SEFIRA. There are certain Hanhagis Avelis, which the island is familiar with the basics, and we'll try to go a little bit more and a little bit what's negated, maybe specifically to this year. What do we know about this year? Then we have a lot to get to, Be'ez Hashem, and we know, Klal Yisrael understand that if we are noyig in Avelis, and if a person, he grows his beard, and he doesn't go to chasanas, and there's no music, and he knows all this. So then he understands it's not because of some Maisa that took place thousands of years ago. He understands that Klal Yisrael, the Metzius of Klal Yisrael, the time that we're living in now, is a time which we need to be over ourselves. We already got a wake-up call, and now as we go into SEFIRA, we have to go in with the intensity and the understanding. Klal Yisrael understand that the days that lead up to Matan Torah, those days, there's a high-level expectation. And that's why when you have Talmidei Rebbe Kiva, who the highest Madrega, Tzadikim, Tanoim, but there was some epis on their level, some big book about the way that they were not noig kovids de lazeh. And that was a taina specifically because of the days that you could reach up to the Nun Shara HaKedusha. You can get all the way up to the highest level in Torah. So those that were the moiser of the Torah, those that are supposed to be giving over the Torah, they have to be on the highest level. And the expectation was on the highest level. And that's why they received such a dreadful oynish. But today our availus is because we understand the severity of these times. We understand the seriousness of these days and the expectation on Klal Yisrael, especially those that love the Heilige Torah. What's expected from us is therefore going to be mechayvus to act a certain way. The avelis halachas are there to put us into a certain serious mode and to understand what's incumbent upon us as we lead up to the days of Matan Torah. As we lead up to those days, they have to be more careful. These were always shver days in Klal Yisrael. These were the days of the Crusades. Whoever remembers from the Kinnis, those are the days you read in Kinnih Chav Beis, the days right before Shavuos, when the Rishoyim, Yimach Shemam, when they came into the Maisha, they came into all the different places, the times of the Crusades. Later in Tachvatatis were terrible times. And even in our century, in our last century, in the Shoah and the Holocaust, those were the days, especially for Hungarian Judaism, Yiddishkeit, those were the days, also always difficult days. I know that my own Alta Zaydas, the Yarchei for Hukva, in the days right before Shavuos, in the days of the time of SEFIRA, because these were days of always extreme diktuk, extreme oynish, and perfection, obviously not a question of those that were taken al Kiddush Hashem, but the general midas hadin in the world was because these days there's a certain perfection level of expectation coming to the time being roi for Kabbalah Satira. And we, unfortunately, Lida, we already have had an extended form of that, which already puts us into the mode and the understanding of the severity and the seriousness and the opportunity of these times. And therefore, let's go right to the halachas, especially what could be negated this year, maybe a little bit different, to get into the understanding of the halachas of SEFIRA. The Marsha, Muridik Marsha, good to hear in these days, Rabbi Yisai. The Heilige Marsha, he writes on the Gemara in Yevamis, why dafka did they die between Pesach and Atzeres? Why dafka now? Marsha says, there's a Gemara in Shabbos on Daf Kuf Mem Zayin. The Gemara says, Kol Shekaini, Bein Tova, Bein Davcha Latzarta. That these days specifically, between the days of Pesach and Shavuos, are healthy days. Kar for the refuah, says the Heilige Marsha. These days are healthy days, and therefore b'dafka, these were the days that HaKadosh Baruch Hu took these 24,000 tzaddikim to show that it was pure ashkacha and nothing to do with the teva. So that's why it happened dafka during these days. The Maral also says the same idea, that during these days he wanted to show, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to show that the reason they were killed, that they died, was because of chait and not because of the teva. And we mevakish from the Heilige Bashefer that the teva, which like the Chazayin each says, is the rotzin that the Rebbeinu Shalom loves the most. That's called teva. We ask him to please give us that teva, that these days from Pesach till Shavuos should be the healthy days, and give refuah to all of those in Klal Yisrael that require that refuah. And the Maral tells us that dafka, because of the extremity and expectation, like we spoke about, of Kovid HaTorah, Kovid is Gematria Leiv, Lamed Beis, 32 days were the amount of days that they died. The Maral explains, the 50 days, there was the actual deaths and mises, like we'll see in a moment. But the people that got sick, says the Maral, they all got sick up until Lag BaOmer. Then there were those that died afterward, but until then they got sick. Kineged the COVID that they weren't noyig zeh bazeh. So with that, Rabbi Isai, David stood health and taka that we this year will be zeicha to that moiridik teva that the Rebbeinu Shalom loves the most of making these healthy days, and we will be able, Imit Hashem, to prepare ourselves, the Ezra Hashem, Gizunta Heit, for the Matan Torah. There are two minhagim based on what we just spoke about, based on the mises, on the deaths of the Talmidim Rebbe Bekiva. There are two minhagim brought over here in Shulchan Aruch and Siman Tov Tzadi Gimel. See, base is the minhag of the Bet Yosef, Maran Bet Yosef. Maran Bet Yosef, he learns that they died until Lamed Daled Ba'omer. And that's the minhag of the Sfardim hold, that the Avelos Halachas are all until Alad Ba'omer, Lamed Daled Ba'omer. Already in the morning, they could shave, they could listen to music, because we say mixes hayoim kekulai. But that's based on the understanding that the Talmidim of Rebbe Akiva died till the 34th day. That's the Shita of the Sfardim. The Shita of, I'll call it the Ramah, and it really was the Minig of Vilna, the Chayodim says. The Minig in Vilna, the Chayodim explains, is that we go from Rosh Chodesh Iyar until Shloshis Yimei Agbalah. The Tosfos explains this minig, and everyone knows there is an Ashkenazi minig like this. Tosfos explains that it's based on the fact that the Talmidim died over the course of 33 days. Which 33 days did they die? They died scattered days over the course of this 50 days. Which days? The days that you didn't say Tachanun, the days that you did say Tachanun, the Tachanun days. So for example, Pesach is 7 days. Nobody died in those 7 days. Then there are 7 Shabbosis. After the 7 Shabbosis, there's also 3 days, 2 days of Rosh Chodesh here, and 1 day of Rosh Chodesh Sivan, which makes 17 days, minus 1, because one of those days is already included, because every Pesach has a Shabbos. So that means they died over the course of 33 days, and 16 days they didn't. But we choose 33 days to commemorate that and to get into the understanding that these are serious days, and days that have to be treated with the proper value and understanding to become roy for Matan Torah. Derech Hagav, you don't even say Avarachamim. Even in Nisan, you don't say Avarachamim. Excuse me, you say Avarachamim. Even in Nisan, and always we say Avarachamim during the time of SEFIRA. The Mishabur brings down in Siman Reish Pei Dalid and Sivkot and Yitches. Why do we say Avarachamim? Because these days, Taka, there were many Niftarim, and there were many people that died al Kiddush Hashem. So therefore, we say Avarachamim in these days. It's interesting. You know, they say a story that there was a person came to the shul, you know, the whole Avarachamim fight that they always have. Yeah, Avarachamim, not Avarachamim, the whole fight that they always have. So finally they said, look, that guy over there, he's Al Tahid, let's ask him. He was here in the last door. He'll know if they said Avarachamim. So they asked him, no, Rabbi, Zugmer, was gewinnt, Taka? Haben wir gesagt Avarachamim, es nicht gesagt Avarachamim. So he said, ich suche eine Sache, I tell you one thing. Ich weiß nicht, wer sagen Avarachamim, nicht sagen Avarachamim, aber eine Sache ist klar. They always fought about it. There was always a machlekes. So we know now the answer. The answer is there is Avarachamim in Nisan, there is Avarachamim the whole entire year, because those were days that were difficult days in Klal Yisrael always. Akapanim, this Anhaga, the Anhaga of the Sfardim is one Anhaga. The Anhaga of the Minig Ramah is a different Anhaga from Rosh Chodesh Iyar. Comes along the Mishnah Berurah over here, and he brings down, and it's really the Ramah himself brings down another minig that we go not like we said from Rosh Chodesh Iyar until the Shloshis Yimei Agbalah, but that we go from Pesach basically after Pesach until Lag BaOmer. From Pesach until Lag BaOmer. What's the logic of going from Pesach until Lag BaOmer? So the Mishnah Berurah and the Vilna Gaon learn it's basically the same shita as the Shulchan Aruch, but that the Shulchan Aruch said they died until Lamed Daled. And this shita within the Ramah, they died until Lamed Gimel, which would mean it's not the same shita that we just discussed previously of the shita of the Minig Ashkenaz, we'll call it, the Minig of Vilna, as we'll call it, because that shita held that they did not die until Lag BaOmer or until Lag BaOmer. That shita held they died on the Tachanun days. That's the shita of the Mishnah Berurah and the Vilna Gaon. But the shita of the Bach, of Yael Serkis, he was the Rav in Belz, he was the Rav in Brisk, he was the Rav in Krakow. Rav Yael Serkis, the Heilige Bach, he learns not like that. The Bach learns that this minig is really basically the same minig as the other minig Ashkenaz, and that they died over 33 days, in which 33 days were the 33 days that they did not say Tachanun. But the first minig held that therefore you chose from Rosh Chodesh year until the Shlosh Simer Kallah. But Mashenkin, this minig says no, you could take a different 33 days, but they have to be retifis. You can't just choose any 33 days. So which 33 days? The starting 33 days from Pesach until Lag BaOmer. Says Rabbeinu HaGadol, Rav Moshe Feinstein Zecher Tzadik Livracha. Rav Moshe has a tshuva in Aleph Kuf Nun Tes, where Rav Moshe says something that this year might be very negaya for some people. Some people this year, hopefully they wish that that those days after Pesach will be gesunte Tag and they'll be healthy days and life will be able to get back together, B'ezras Hashem. There'll be people that are going to have certain minhagim like buying things. There's certain people that are a little bit broken now. They're going to want to listen to music. There's certain people that didn't get a chance to have a haircut. And usually their minhag is that they go and they keep from Rosh Chodesh year. And this year they want to know, maybe I can have a week and I want to have the week before a year. I'd rather keep it this year. The first half of SEFIRA, as we call it, says going with Moshe Feinstein, it's totally in this machlekes. So the going with Moshe, the feed of the goyin, which I'm telling you is also the Mishnah Berurah. So then you can't do that because your minig is a totally different minig. Your minig holds that when did the Talmidim die? They died a scattered 33 days. Mashen came, the minig of going to Lag BaOmer holds that they went and only until Lag BaOmer. They were nifter only until Lag BaOmer. So according to that, it's two different minhagim. So your minig of a regular year says they died on totally different days. So you have no right now to keep the SEFIRA on the first days when you hold all those other years. Now when did they die? They died at a different time, which allows you to do from Rosh Chodesh until Shlosh Simer Kallah. But Mashiach Cain says they're going with Moshe. If you learn like the Bach, and the Bach learns is one minig in Ashkenaz. That minig is that they died in scattered days. And now you choose which 33 days you want to choose to commemorate that. The first 33 or the second 33. It says with Moshe that the Avelis, you can go to Kallah. And B'shas Chak, I think he says B'shas Gadol, says going with Moshe, B'shas Chak, you can be Saimach and change your minig even without the Taras Nedarim because it's the same minig. It's not called you're changing your minig. It's called that you're just the same exact minig and you're choosing your 33 days this way or that way, which of course is a tremendous chiddush from Moshe because even if you learn like the Bach, you could have heard, but this minig says which 33 days to keep. And that's the koyach of Rabbeinu HaGadol who told us not like that. But the minig is that we understand 33 days scattered. Now you choose the first or the second. This is the psak of Moshe. Somebody wants to be saimach on this psak. Definitely this year, if he wants to change his minig even without a taras nedarim, there's a makom to be makel. I say there's a makom to be makel because even Moshe didn't say it l'chatchila, and also Rabbeinu HaGadol, the Rosh Hashiva of Shach, Zeichel Tzadik Livracha, in his sefer, in his mechtavim actually, in Chelik Vav, in the 557th letter over there, Rav Shach, at the page 557, Rav Shach Zeichel Livracha held not like the Igros Moshe. Rav Shach held that no way, you can't change your minig, and so much so, you can't change your minig, even without Taras Nedarim, you can't change your minig, says Rav Shach. Because Kumtais, all the other years that you kept, let's say, the second half, you were saying they died then. And it'll come out that this year, I'm showing that I did Isser by taking my haircut at that time last time. So therefore, Shachel, not like this, and certainly this is Makim to be Makel, upon him this year, if a person wants to change his minig, even without a Taras Nedarim. And certainly, if he would do a Taras Nedarim, he could change his minig this year and keep a different time. Maisa, if this doesn't affect, if a person has a chasana to go to, that already Rav Moshe tells us, and others said the same thing. If I have a chasana, and the chasana falls out in a time where it's my time that I'm keeping Sfiras Omer, so Moshe and others, they said, Avadi, you can go to the chasana, because I have a chiyuv to be mesameach the chas and Kallah. Once the chas and Kallah have a right to get married, so then even if it's in the time that I'm keeping the Avelis, but I have a mitzvah simcha to be mesameach the chas and Kallah. So that's not a reason enough to change your minig. You don't have to change your minig because you want to go to a chasana. You'll be allowed to change your minig. You're allowed to go to the chasana even without changing your minig. That's l'maisa when it comes to changing the minig. The Mishnah Berurah over here in Sivkot and Beis. The Mishnah Berurah over here in Sivkot and Beis, Mishnah Berurah brings down, it's not roi to be marbe in simcha in these days, says the Mishnah Berurah. Ain't roi laharbeis besimcha. Maisa, I don't think we need chizik in that. I think over here by us, Lida, we need chizik to give us yes simcha. The Mishnah Berurah does tell us that in these days, not to be marbe simcha. A God I once asked of Yashiv, I saw in a certain sefer, he says that you can't move into a different house on the days of SEFIRA because of that Mishnah Berurah. Mishnah Berurah says you shouldn't be marbe simcha in these days. My Sir Yashiv said not like that. He said befrat in Eretz Yisrael, where it's a mitzvah. And I'll say even more, befrat, that most people, when they buy a house, they don't make a shechiyanu, which would, has that connotation of shechiyanu lazman hazeh, which maybe that would be the reason to stay away from buying a new house. You say a toifa meitiv, good for you, good for the other people that are going to be using the house. And in general, a person should ask which things are considered to be marbe simcha, and not to get confused with the 9 days. People get a little bit confused with the 9 days. They once asked the HILCHOS are you allowed during the SEFIRA to go to the Yam every year? And it's Israel for sure. You have, on Fridays they have the separate beach, and the Ilam goes there. And they asked the Steipler, could you go to the Yam during the 9 days, during the SEFIRA Sa'imah? So the Steipler said, Avada, and then he said an interesting thing, because they told him, but somebody last week went to the Yam and he was killed. He died in the Yam. And so Steipler said he heard the story, and the reason was because he went far out and he went too far and it was dangerous, and he would have died whether it would have been SEFIRA Sa'imah, and it wouldn't have been SEFIRA Sa'imah, because when you do dangerous things, so then that's a sakana. That has nothing to do with SEFIRA Sa'imah. Steipler said people confuse the SEFIRA Sa'imah with the 9 days. In the 9 days, for sure, we don't go to certainly not to the beach, and certainly not to, anyways, to go to swimming, etc. And certainly there's an Indian to be more careful. Binyane asakana. During SEFIRA Sa'imah, that there's a special Indian of being careful, dafka more, because of Binyane sakana. Now, the Mishnah Berurah continues in Sivkot and Beis, and Mishnah Berurah says an interesting lashon. Where it brings down over here in this damin, the kol makom in this damin is an Indian tzarich levarich shechiyanu yivarich. Mishnah says if you have some reason that you have to say shechiyanu, says the Mishnah Berurah, you can make a shechiyanu. If you read the Mishnah Berurah, in every single drop of ink, Rabbi Yankiv Zechreinu Levracha told us in the Mishnah Berurah, every drop of ink gets it shiva nekiyah. And the Mishnah Berurah has like a few drops of ink over here, which sound like to make a shechiyanu is not like a tchil. Mishnah Berurah says during SEFIRA, if it comes your way to make a shechiyanu, so then you're allowed to make a shechiyanu. In this damin, you're allowed to make a shechiyanu. And I saw that Rav Nissen Karelitz, Taka says such a type of idea that maybe not to go out of your way to buy something to make a shechiyanu, not to go out of your way to buy a shechiyanu, but if you have something, you're certainly allowed to make a shechiyanu. The Maisa, when you look inside in the Maimer Mordechai, what the Mishnah Berurah is quoting over there, it really doesn't sound like that. It sounds like from the Maimer Mordechai, which Mishnah Berurah is quoting, that B'emes, you're allowed to make a shechiyanu during these days, and that's not one of the anhagas. You have to remember, Abu said, most everything that's written in the Paiskim of year are just anhagas that Klal Yisrael accepted because of all the doiris that these days were difficult days for Klal Yisrael, whether it was the Crusades, the Holocaust, and Klal Yisrael accepted more and more anhagas. But there's nothing from Gemara that says anything about these minhagim, and there's no dinim in the Rabbanans that are, and therefore the Maimer Mordechai says we don't find anywhere, any reason or any acharon that says not to make a shechiyanu, and therefore the Maimer Mordechai says that even if somebody would have a minig not to make it, but if you don't have that minig, certainly if it comes your way, you certainly could make a shechiyanu during these days. And I saw that Rav Chaim Kanievsky says that the Mishnah Berurah is lav dafka. What the Mishnah Berurah just means is that if you have a shechiyanu, you can make a shechiyanu. Now this opens us up to a little bit of a greater picture of are you allowed to buy a new suit, a new hat, the things that we make shechiyanos on during SEFIRA Sa'imah. This year it's very negeya because most people probably or definitely didn't get a chance if they needed the new suit, or the bar mitzvah boy certainly didn't get a chance to buy his hat and this and that. So this year during SEFIRA, if a person needs a suit and he needs a hat, is there any reason not to buy a suit or a hat, etc., during the days that you're holding in the Avelos of SEFIRA Sa'imah? So the truth is, there's no Mishnah Berurah like that. Mishnah Berurah says, really, if anything, the exact opposite. Mishnah Berurah says, not only are you allowed to buy during this time new clothing and even clothing that requires Shechiyanu, Mishnah Berurah says you can even make the Shechiyanu. And say the word Shechiyanu, Lazman Azeh. Baruch Hashem, I'm alive in this time. That's the Mishnah Berurah Shita. There are people that have a minig not like this. And certainly I'm not being mizalz on the minig. Because if you take the letters of minig and you switch them around, you switch around minig, you get Gehenim. I'm not, if a person has a minig that he doesn't buy new clothing during SEFIRA, or he doesn't say Shechiyanu during SEFIRA, he should keep his minig. That's a minig. But if you do not have them, and I think in Eretz Yisrael, many do actually have that minig of not buying new things. But let's understand what's minig and what's din. When it comes to the din, din is certainly that Medina, you're allowed to buy new clothing, and by us, there's even more of a reason to allow a person to buy new clothing. It's us, when we buy new clothing, it seems to be the only issue the Mishnah Berurah would have even possibly had is that a person shouldn't be maybe saying Shechiyanu, which even that the Mishnah Berurah is make on. But we, today, when we buy clothing, we don't make the Shechiyanu upon buying the clothing. We make the Shechiyanu upon wearing the clothing. So let's break it down. First of all, the Mishnah Berurah holds it's mutter to even say the Shechiyanu. If you want to be machmer, not say the Shechiyanu, but certainly you should be allowed to buy the clothing that require a Shechiyanu. And even if a person wants to be machmer on that, if he has a minig like that, certainly on Shabbos, you could certainly, there would be a big makom to buy the clothing because it'll make the Shechiyanu on Shabbos. And even more, don't forget, there's lots of clothing that we don't make a Shechiyanu. The minig is we don't make a Shechiyanu on shoes, certainly on a shirt, on undergarments, socks, simple things people don't make a Shechiyanu on. So basically, to leave it like this, if you have a minig not to buy new clothing, keep your minig. And that's the minig of many in Eretz Yisrael. But if you don't have the minig, especially this year, certainly it's mutter to buy, and certainly it's mutter to buy the suit and the jacket and the hat, certainly if you're not going to wear it. And certainly if you're going to wear it on Shabbos, there's much more of a makom to make of the Shechiyanu. But I'll leave it to halacha, it's mutter, medina, to buy a suit, make a Shechiyanu, even during the week. So I'll go put and wait till Shabbos, and then for sure, if you don't have a minig, you'd be allowed to. New children's clothing, new clothing for children usually don't get a Shechiyanu. And that for sure is mutter. A chassan Kallah, certainly the parents of the chassan and the Kallah who weren't able to buy the things they needed, and the chassan and the Kallah themselves before the wedding, certainly could be makel. Like I said, Medina, there is no issa to buy items during the SEFIRA unless you have a minig. And even if you have a minig, if you're a chassan and Kallah, the tzarich mitzvah, you could be makel. Also, a bar mitzvah bocher, it's ganz fine mistama makim to be makel. Certainly, to buy him his hat, to buy him his jacket. Certainly, there's a ganz fine makim to make, especially if they'll make that Shechiyanu on Shabbos. Certainly, and certainly when it comes to items that you don't even make a Shechiyanu, like a new car. Moshe has a discussion even during the 9 days. And a new car, what do you make on a new car? You don't make a Shechiyanu. You make a toiv native. It's good for you. It's good for others. Certainly, such a thing during SEFIRA. You don't have a minig, then you're certainly going to be allowed to buy. Ayin and Divin Malkiel, Gimel Yud Gimel, a more extensive discussion of this, but let's go weiter. Mishnah Berurah goes weiter over here, and Mishnah Berurah Sivkot and Gimel discusses music, but he doesn't discuss listening to music. Mishnah Berurah discusses Rikudim and Mechelos. Mishnah Berurah discusses dancing. Mishnah Berurah tells us that to dance during these days is another minig that Kallah Yisrael accepted on themselves, not to be dancing during the Avelos times in SEFIRA. The HaShulchan and Sivkot and Beis tells us that since it's Rikudim, dancing is aser, Kol Shekain, says the Rebbe Nevardik, the Rebbe of St. Petersburg, so Kal V'Chaymer, you're also not going to be allowed to listen to music. And that is the minig of, basically, I think all of Kallah Yisrael, the Rameshes, Zechron L'Vracha, in Kuf Sameh Vav, in Gimel Pei Zayin. That's the minig today, that we don't listen to music during SEFIRA. You look at Rameshes, it's interesting. Rameshes sounds like, that Moshe had a shita that listening to music the whole year based on the Rambam and others is a problem because of the Churban. Moshe sounds like even if you don't accept it the whole year to not listen to music, but the minig of Kallah Yisrael is accepted on themselves not to listen to music, I'll upon him during the days of SEFIRA. Moshe learns as if to say it's an extension of that which we don't listen to music because of the Churban. So there are 2 times in the year that everybody keeps that minig, even though the rest of the year only some people keep not listening to music, like Ramosha himself. But at least during SEFIRA and the 3 weeks, everybody keeps that minute. That's how Rav Moshe learns. It's interesting. Somebody last year said to me, it's a Amerikanische minute not to listen to music. Yeah, you don't find it in the Mishabura. You don't find it in the earlier Paiskim. It's not such a big kasha. In the earlier days, they didn't have recordings like we have. It wasn't so common for a person to have his banjo and his guitar. It wasn't such a common thing. But Al Kapanim, I told you anyways, the Aruch HaShulchan says in Furish, and Rav Moshe says it is the minute. But the person told me, Minig America. I told him, don't say, then for sure it's a problem. Why Minig America or Minig today? So Rav Moshe, he has a different tshuva. Rav Moshe has a tshuva about taking a cold shower on Shabbos. That tshuva, Rav Moshe has a shayla. What's a very interesting Rav Moshe? Rav Moshe has a shayla. You got to take a cold shower on Shabbos. What's a shayla? Rav Moshe says there was a Minig Yisrael that's brought in the Paiskim, Shulchan Aruch, and Mishnah Chavav, and other Paiskim, other places. It's a Minig all the years from the times of Chazal, really, certainly through the times of the Rishonim, not to take a cold bath, not to bathe in a cold body of water on Shabbos, nothing to do with Sfira. And Rav Moshe declares is showering in a cold shower on Shabbos included in the Minig Yisrael of not bathing in cold water, going into a river, going into it. And Rav Moshe has a guy to tshuva over there who explains the reasons of why why Kallah Yisrael had this minig of not going into a body of water, a cold body of water. It has to do with skita, it has to do with Shema, he'll build a raft, it has to do with maybe he'll come to do Hiksa. And Rav Moshe shows that perhaps those reasons wouldn't necessarily apply in a shower, to take a cold shower today on Shabbos. Rav Moshe shows that maybe those reasons wouldn't apply. So then Rav Moshe has a shayla. Listen to the Chakira of Rav Moshe. Rav Moshe has a shayla. What's the pshat today in America that the people don't take a cold shower on Shabbos? Is it the pshat that it's a toyus? They think it's included in the regular minig that always was, and they thought that just like going into any cold body of water, so you can't go into a shower. And says Rav Moshe, I just showed you that it's not the same. Or it says Rav Moshe, no. Kallah Yisrael know that. But they accepted on themselves a new minig. That even though it's not like the old minig of not going into a cold body of water, it's different. After they extended it because they were scared of schita or whatever. Says Rav Moshe, if it's the first way, it's a minig tayis. Then we don't have to listen to this minig. Says Rav Moshe had a lot of faith in Kallah Yisrael. Says going Rav Moshe, it's not a tayis. Kallah Yisrael, not Nevi'im Hain, B'nai Nevi'im, and they made a new minig on themselves. A new minig. A cold shower, you're not allowed to take on Shabbos unless the person's bitzar, etc. It's not for now, it's a different sugya. Now, Kapanim, you see, Rav Moshe, it's the same idea we can apply over here. If somebody wants to say that this minig of music, of listening to music, was not in Europe and it's a new minig, so then fine. So then now the Kallah Yisrael accepted it upon themselves, and you see Rav Moshe accepted it and learned it's an extension of the original minig of the original hanaga of not listening to music. The Chalal Bisman HaChorban, like upon him, that's the minig. The Maisa, I think it could be somebody has a minig not like this, and of course he can keep his minig, but that certainly is the minig, I think, of Rav of Kallah Yisrael. The Maisa, this year, is there anything that a person dafka needs to know specifically about music? So, if a person is depressed, so then there's already from the Marsham, the person's depressed and he's listening to the music to take him out of his chayli, then for sure there is a makim to be makel. Somebody should listen to it if he's depressed. Okay, if the person is one night a little bit sad, I don't know, but Akapanim is certainly if he feels down and he feels low, there's a makim to be makel to take him out. If he's suffering chalilah from depression, le'aleinu, especially this year, somebody who feels alone, especially this year, a lot of people are alone. If he needs the music to keep up his spirits, it would be a makim to be makel. Certainly, if children that need to listen to, sometimes they have a shiur of Torah, and it's hard to get the kids to learn these days, and they have shiurim that are interspersed with music in the background. Rishlon Zalman Orbach Zechron Levacha was makel on that type of music. It's not that music of simcha, it's really just a chatimtzah for the Torah learning. Rav Moshe, in general, on a bar chinuch child in Dalid, Chav Aleph, Dalid, if the child is a bar chinuch, he starts learning about it already in the cheder, in the school. So then Rav Moshe said that you do have to be machmir on music for a child. But Akapanim, certainly under chinuch, a child, now a lot of the mothers over here became ganenets and they became kindergarten teachers. Certainly you could have music for the under children, under bar chinuch children 3 years old, 4 years old, that to get them to be able to teach them and to get them all levidik. so then you could, for an under chinuch child, have music. The gabe learning an instrument, so the prima godim for parnasa is mekel, to play music for parnasa purposes. Moshe, the Igros Moshe, in Gimel Pei Zayin, the Moshe says that to learn for a parnasa, to learn an instrument for a parnasa, the Moshe is mekel. However, Moshe writes that to learn for hana reasons, to learn an instrument, to practice an instrument because you just want to know for the geschmack of it, the Moshe held that is a problem during Sfiras Omer. I just want to be moist of something. It could be that if a person is like at the start of learning, or he's learning a certain song and it doesn't sound like music and he's just learning the chords, it doesn't really sound mamish like music, it's just pressing this key and that key and a couple keys together and it sounds like some cat is being murdered by a band of angry children or something. Well, I would imagine that even Rav Moshe would agree that that's mutter, even during SEFIRA. Kozman, it doesn't sound like music. That's already, for sure, you could be mekel. Singing bepeh is mutter. You're allowed to sing with your mouth. There is an interesting Aruch HaShulchan. Aruch HaShulchan says that a person taker is allowed to sing songs at a komzitz. However, Rav Moshe explains that you're not allowed to sing songs at a komzitz that's going to get you to get up and dance, because there certainly is an issur of dancing during SEFIRA. So you're only going to be allowed to sing songs that are not the songs that are going to get a person to get up and start dancing. The Maisa, when it comes to a cappella, so if somebody just sings into a recording and you're just listening to somebody who's singing into a recording, so this, it's interesting. The Welt quotes from Moshe Feinstein, Zechariah Levracha, that he was mekel on somebody who just, sings a cappella by just singing into a recording. The Welt quotes from Moshe that he's mekel. It's a little bit not fair, Rabbi Say, to quote Rav Moshe, because Rav Moshe in that tshuva is really being machmir on not listening to music the whole entire year. And that tshuva, Rav Moshe, who's machmir and never listening to music, so Rav Moshe holds that a cappella you're allowed to listen to if a person is listening to music. If a person is listening to music, so then if a person is listening to a cappella, in other words, it doesn't have instruments in the background, Rav Moshe holds that that's not included in the issur of not listening to music the whole entire year. So it's a little bit unfair to quote Rav Moshe, when Rav Moshe really in that truth is coming to be machmir and to say, we'll take that part of Rav Moshe, not that part of Rav Moshe. But L'maisa, there's definitely is takar makim to be mekel, that when it comes to listening to a cappella, if it's a type of a cappella that the person is just singing straight into the recording, so then that's not the same hanhaga. And the truth is, all of these inyanim go with minig. And if you see that Klal Yisrael didn't really accept so much the minig, and they accepted the yes, listen to a cappella, so then there is a makim to listen to a cappella. However, the very big however, there's a different type of a cappella, which today, they write on it the SEFIRA CD, and you feel like you're not religious if you don't buy it. And sometimes it's a modified a cappella, and it's computerized, and it's some type that are called with an equalization process and a modification process. And Rebelsky Zecher Tzadik Levracha, in his Sefer Shulchan HaLevi, also in the English Shulchan HaLevi, he explains Bariches that the way it works is it's a computer that is basically modifying the voice. And if in essence you think about it, it's a computer which is taking the voice and fixing it. Everybody say you hear these songs sometimes in the a cappella and it sounds mamish like a whole band. You hear in the background all these different noises. The truth is, they have people over there making these noises that probably, if you'd see them in the street, you'd probably cross the street. But akapanim, how do they get that beat? So what they do is they have that fellow in the background, and he's with his, he's got his finger lock, and he's got his this, and he's got his hands under his armpits and all types of places and whatever. And then the computer hears the little extra over there, and the computer chops that off, and the computer adds over here protons and croutons and adds tone over here and takes away the bass over there, and then goes and replicates the voice over here and over there and over there. And by the time you finish it, Rabbi say, you're not listening anymore to someone's voice. You're listening to a computer modified voice, which in essence is an instrument. And therefore, Rebelsky, Ayin Sham, he's Myrich, and he explains it a lot better than I just did. But Ayin Sham, Rebelsky, is Machmir, but you're not allowed to listen to a modified a cappella. You're only allowed to listen to the type where a person just singing straight into a recording. And again, if a person needs music because he's depressed, he's sad, he's alone, there might be a makom to be makel, because that's considered a person's in a matzah of a chayli. And, if you'd ask me, is it better to listen to the acapella? So the acapella type, the first type, then yeah, the modified, I don't see any difference. And l'chayra, you might as well listen to the good music. When it comes to exercising with music, this Lamaisa, I asked Rav Yashiv and I asked Rav Nissen Kavelitz. Both of them said that if a person is exercising for health reasons, that he had heart issues, and if he doesn't exercise, then it's very unhealthy for him. And he's not going to exercise without music because he just won't do it. So then we're going to be makel because it's for refuah. If somebody wants to stop exercise with music, the Yashiv was not makel, Nissen Kavelitz wasn't makel. Maybe the person should ask what they're abanim in America, but that's what the Yashiv and Rav Nissen held. That's the gishmak, the music together with the exercise is the gishmak, and that's for sure a problem. That's what they held. Rav Yashiv, I once asked, he was makel at Achnas Torah to have music and to have a band. Rav Moshe was makel at Sheva Brachas to have a band. This year, if the person's going to have a small chasana, and then afterward, we're zoicha that he gets out of the matzah and he's at a Sheva Brachas, so he'll have a band. Rav Moshe was makel on the band at a Sheva Brachas. If it's Negaya this year. It's an interesting Mishnah Berurah. Before I go to the last part about haircuts, Mishnah Berurah over here in the Shartzin and Sif Cut and Dalet, very interesting Mishnah Berurah. Mishnah Berurah is mistapek that even if we allow in the time that you're not keeping SEFIRA, in other words, let's say I kept the first half, and now it's the second half, so we allow you to have haircuts, and we allow Akapanim things, says the Mishnah Berurah, that are very important, like a haircut, like a shave. Says the Mishnah Berurah, maybe we're not makel on Rikudim and Mechelos and music. Mishnah Berurah is mistapik. So that would mean that you can't listen to music the entire Sefirah, even in the time which isn't your Avelis. I saw Shlomo Zalman says, yeah, but the minig is Mishnah Berurah is mistapik, and the minig is to not listen to music the entire Sefirah. Now, I don't think that's the minig in Chutzarts. I don't think it's even the minig in Eretz Yisrael. We saw that a lot of these inyanim are based on minig. Therefore, if it's not the minig, you don't have to be more machmir than the minig. And when your availus time is up, your SEFIRA time is up, you are allowed to listen to music. Kimaya minig, the gabe haircuts will be messiahing with this. The gabe haircuts. So that's also mavoyer over here that a haircut is usher until Lag Ba'omer for the Ashkenazim that are keeping the first half. It's Lag Ba'omer in the morning, not at night, and it's already Lag Ba'omer in the morning. He could have haircut, he could have a shave. For the Sfardim, they have to wait till Lamed Dalid Ba'omer, Lad Ba'omer, and then you can have your haircut. And even those that are keeping the second half, everyone knows that they're Meko Akopanim on Lag Ba'omer, unless you keep like the minig of the Arizal. Arizal held these days are Yamim Atzluyim B'Sa'ira. They're days that are totally by hairs, and we have the Zecher that we don't cut our hair, we don't shave and anything, and that's a totally different cheshbon. The Arizal held even for Chesanim, the Arizal held no kulas, but that's something up in Kabbalah. Some people do have that on Haga, some people don't. The Gabe ladies, I'm under the impression that Sephardi ladies do cut their hair during Sefirah Saimer. I looked in the Sephardish Paiskim and they seem to be Mekel. Rav Tzia B'Shoyel, Rav Avaja, they seem to be Mekel. For ladies, the Ashkenazi Paiskim, Moshe, Beis Kuf Lamed Zayin, it's machmir that even ladies have this on Haga, that they do not take haircuts during Sefirah Saimer, unless there's a big Tzarech, Chalila, a lady, Rachmana litzlan, that have maybe an Avelis already, and maybe she has a big Tzarech. A lady certainly this is much to be Mekel. A girl for the purpose of Shidduchin, she wasn't able to get a haircut because of light of the times that we were living in before Pesach. A woman is allowed to do any type of hair removal that is not on the hair, whether it's eyebrows, eyelashes, legs, etc. This year, children in general, the minig is to be machmir on children, even under chinuch we're machmir. No, this year, if there's a big tzarech, obviously if the child's hair is getting too long, it doesn't look right, so certainly in a child, there's a makom to be mekel, to have a haircut. That's an upsharing. The minig is that people wait until Lag Ba'omer. That's always the minig, is that you wait till Lag Ba'omer to have the upshare. Shlomo Zalman had an interesting halacha that, excuse me, interesting halacha Shlomo Zalman held, and I got years ago, this is Negeya, my oldest bar mitzvah boy, that Shlomo Zalman held that a bar mitzvah boy that wanted to take a haircut You should take the haircut dafka when he's a katan, even if it's in the time of his avelis, so as not to have to take the haircut when he becomes a gadol. Even though you could say on the day of the bar mitzvah, it's a yontif, and maybe you should be allowed to take the haircut on the day of the bar mitzvah, which is the yontif. So Rosh Hashanah, it's preferable to take it on the day when he's still a katan, so that he has the din of a katan at that point, taking a haircut. Moshe Zichron Levracha was makel for hefsid. The person feels he's going to have a loss, he's going to get fired, his boss is going to look down on him if he shaves. L'maisa today, if your boss is giving you trouble, you should just tell him that beards are in style. I don't know if you're going to lose your job. Right? If I can't, you tell the boss that he should grow a beard. I think beards are all in style, so I don't think you're going to lose your job. But it's interesting. I heard a story, and you guys can tell me if I'm right about the story, if you verify the story. Someone told me once, the person told me about himself. I just wonder if Yankiv always felt like this. Somebody told me he once went into the shul by Yankiv Kamenetsky, and Yankiv saw that on Erev Shabbos, it was during SEFIRA, and that he was shaved. He shaved like a minute, a lot of the Balabatim, that because of parnasa reasons, he felt he would lose his job and whatever. So he shaved. So Yankiv told him, what are you doing? You're shaving. What's going on? So the person told him, no, for parnasa. So Yankiv told him, during the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you can shave. Okay? But Shabbos, forget it, the covenant for the Eibishter is dafka not to shave and to keep the rules of SEFIRA. I guess the minhag ha'olam of the people that don't do this is because they say, wow, I'm going to shave dafka for my boss, and then comes Shabbos, that's like a zilzal. But the Yankiv apparently says not like that. Somebody should verify it. I don't know if it's true or not. The guy be a shidduch, when the bacher needs to go to shidduch and shave. Sometimes you have a bacher, he has it, it's like one hair, all the way around, whatever. Sometimes you have a bacher, he's got the face, he starts growing the beard, he looks like a concept of shashiva. But sometimes he's got one there, one here, and it's a little bit embarrassing. So that he considers to be a loss and a hefsid. So maybe the minhag wasn't naig, the makom of hefsid. The only thing I'll tell you though, if I say that there's a famous story with, I don't know which Rosh Hashiva, it's probably every Rosh Hashiva, that they came once, the bacher came into the Rosh Hashiva, and the bacher said, no, I got to shave for a shidduch, and it's terrible. SEFIRA, she told him, okay, you can shave if you want to. It's, I don't know, it's a big kula, and he decided to shave. No, he shaved after the date. The bacher calls the bacher's father, the girl, the maiden's father calls up the Rosh Hashiva and says, Azad bacher, I don't want him for my daughter. No, you're Shemayim, goes and shaves during SEFIRA, forget it, not for my daughter. So before you shave, make sure if it's really such a big tzoyrich, and beards are in style, so the face finished. There's also a story. There's a mice, I think, with Moshe Shraga. Moshe Shraga had to go to Rav had to go to Kennedy, and I think the story was he even had to go maybe on Tisha B'Av itself. So he went to ask Rav Aaron Zichron Levracha about shaving. So he had to shave for the event. It was on Tisha B'Av itself. So Rav Aaron, I think the story goes there. Rav Aaron told him, no, shaving and hair and showering. But go ask for Moshe. But when Kennedy tells you this, you say this. When Kennedy tells you this, you say this. When Kennedy tells you this, you say this. Then Kitzer, he went to Rav Moshe. Rav Moshe told him he could shave. Rav Moshe told him he could shower because Kavod Malchus and Ava, etc. And then he told him, come back to me afterward and tell me the whole story of Hashem Hashem. So he came back to Rav Moshe and he told Rav Moshe his mamish peladik. Mamish, every single thing that Rav Aaron asked, Kennedy asked. And then I answered him. And then so Rav Moshe said, Mamish everything? Mamish everything? Rav Moshe said, no. There were two things that Rav Aaron said that the Kennedy had nishkefrat. So Rav Moshe said, no havamina that Kennedy would be nachis to Rav Aaron. That is like to be nachis all the way to Rav Aaron. Now upon him, I see him.
Time of his death, only later.
I see him by mitzvah. The person certainly, there's a makom to be makel on music. And I'll be Messiah, Siv Dalit over here. It's very interesting. All the things we talked about today, haircuts, music, all these things are not gemaras and akapanim, shechiyanu is not so clear. There's one halacha in Shulchan Aruch, which is the first halacha in Shulchan Aruch, and it seems to be nobody's naig it. Shulchan Aruch says, Siv Dalit, nagu hanoshim, not to do malacha from Pesach till Shavuos, from Shkia. Says the Mishabur, what's the pshat in its meaning? First of all, says the Mishabur, it's not just ladies, it's men, that they don't do work after Shkia. Says the Mishabur, what's the pshat in its meaning? Mishabur brings down two pshat. One pshat is it's because they have to bury people after Shkia. The second pshat is because Sheva Shabbos is Tamimos. So we want to have Tamimos, like the Yavit says, the Ramban explains that from Pesach until Shavuos is one big Cholamoyed, connecting to the Matan Torah. So we want to have Tamimos, Shabbos, Shabbosayin. It's a memory of being Shavis during the time when you count Sefira. Says the Mishabura, according to that, it should come out that only during the half an hour, during the time till you count Sefira, you should have to stop doing Malacha. The Mishabura brings this down as if people are not in this halacha. I saw the Yarchei, he says, yeah, we heard that there are people till today that have this minhag, which means obviously that most people do not have this minhag, and that taka is not the minhag. I would be Messiah as I hear the siren in Yerushalayim Yira Kodesh, which is heralding in the Shvi Shel Pesach. I just want to be Messiah with what I saw in the Chidah Kodesh. The Chidah Kodesh writes that there were 24,000 people, Talmidim, Tzadikim, that were nifter. The 24,000 Talmidim that were nifter, says the Chidah. What were they? Says the Chidah. Heilige Rebbe Kiva was trying to make a chinuch system, because the Gemara in Baba Basra says that the ideal class is one Rebbe to 25 Talmidim, and not more than that. If you do 25 times 24,000, that's 600,000, says the Chidah. Which means, says the Chidah, all of Klal Yisrael had a Rebbe. For every 25 people, there was a Rebbe, one of those 24,000, and that was the chinuch system that Rebbe Kiva was trying to create. Says the Chidah, that means that the entire Rebbeim, the Rebbeim of Klal Yisrael, the Rebbe of Klal Yisrael, were all nifter, and that was Oilam was Shomei. The chinuch system of the Velas was on, that we all lost our Rebbe, the whole Klal Yisrael, 600,000 Neshamas, everybody lost their Rebbe. And later, Aboisai, what can we say? Noiva Minska Rebbe Zeichet Tzadik Levracha, Lev of Klal Yisrael. The whole Klal Yisrael lost the Rebbe. We all lost our Rebbe. But Avelis on Pesach, how can we even talk? How can we even talk? Divrei Esped, and how can we even talk? But all of Klal Yisrael lost their Rebbe. So how can we be mechazik ourselves if all of Klal Yisrael lost their Rebbe, the Noiva Minska Rebbe of the whole Klal Yisrael? So Aboisai Shimu Simu Lev Schi Nafshichem. Listen, Rabbi Isai. There was a Maisa after the war. If I'm not mistaken, the Maisa was with the Kleisenberger Rebbe, maybe the Blushever Rebbe, but I think the Kleisenberger Rebbe is a Chayil of Rache. And he wanted to make a tish, a Shabbos Shira tish. And on Shabbos Shira, he told the Chassidim, we're making some type of a Fabrenga. They told him, Rebbe, it's right after the war. So many people, so many Avelim, so many Niftarim. How can we make a tish? How can we sing? How can we have a Shabbos? How can we do it? So the Rebbe said to them, the Rebbe told them, what does it say? It says, Oz Yashir, the Gemara in Sanhedrin says, Minayin Tchias HaMeisim Min HaTorah. From where do we learn our Tchias HaMeisim? Says the Gemara, Oz Yashir. Why does it say Oz Yashir? We're going to read tomorrow. Moshe Rabbeinu, Oz Yashir, Klal Yisrael, Oz Yashir, they're going to sing in the future? They sang at Kriyas Yamsef. What's Oz Yashir in the future? Says the Gemara, Mikan the Tchias HaMeisim Min HaTorah. From here, that's how you see Tchias HaMeisim. They'll come again and sing again. Moshe Rabbeinu is going to come back and he's going to sing again. There's going to be a Shira again. Said the Rebbe, such an interesting makar for the Tchias HaMeisim. Oz Yashir, what's it the Pshat and Das? Said the Rebbe, because all of Klal Yisrael at that point, or Boisai, after Makas Chayshech, 4/5 of Klal Yisrael were nifter. During the Makas Chayshech, that's when the Kodesh Baruch Hu took out all the people that were Megayish from the Gula and the people that weren't going to be Zaycha to the Geula. That means when Klal Yisrael left Mitzrayim, everybody was in Avelis. Everybody, 4/5 of Klal Yisrael. Ein Bayis, Shein by Beis. There's no else that didn't have suffering. Says the Rebbe, Zot the Rebbe. So the Noy Bezoi said Moshe Rabbeinu to them. Moshe Rabbeinu had the same exact shaila. How can we sing to see us Mitzrayim? How can we go out and have simcha when 4/5 of Klal Yisrael? They also wanted to know when they passed Mitzrayim. How are we going to have simcha now? So many people, so many Avelim, so many Neftarim. So Moshe Rabbeinu told them, Oz Yashir, we will see them again in Tchias HaMeisim. We should be Zoicha Boisai. The Shvi Shel Pesach, Mekubalim tell us, is the Yoim Achim Misugol for the Mashiach to come. And that's why they have a Sudas Mashiach. And we are mechazik ourselves that even though we lost our Leiv of Klal Yisrael, our Rebbe of Klal Yisrael, but we're mechazik ourselves that we will see him soon in Tchias HaMeisim. And as I hear in Yerushalayim, you're a kodesh, the siren, which is saying the Shvishal Pesach. We're all tomorrow, Be'ezus Hashem, we're going to have a Sudas Mashiach. The minig of Kleisel, they have that last Suda, the Sudas Mata, the Sudas Mashiach. And it's Hashem, Mashiach Tzidkenu will be the guest of honor, B'mheira, B'yameinu, Amen.